There we go.
Awesome.
Welcome back to episode 3 of our Tips from Your Boyfriend podcast.
I'm Bethany.
I'm Chinggis. And today we're going to talk about a couple things. First, we want to start with the tip of the day, and then we'll move on to something that we've been calling generally mental plasticity. And then we'll go on to kind of like a relationship-oriented topic of communication styles and how that affects people and how we can kind of help each other figure that one out.
That'll be an interesting one. Just as a heads up, most of these conversations we don't really talk about ahead of time, so I'm curious where this one will go.
Yeah, we don't really plan this out. We kind of just choose like the larger topics that we don't want to talk about, and then we just go on from there and just say what our thoughts off the top of our head. And none of this is really practiced or planned. If we put our foots in our mouth, put our feet in our mouths, then it is what it is.
It's true. I'll work on stop saying like as much. That's my goal for today's podcast.
And I think what I was going to work on is saying, you know what I mean, less.
Yep. We even came up with an acronym for it.
YQUIM, yeah.
YQUIM.
I know. So what's the tip of the day? Tip of the day is change sides of the bed, right?
Yes.
So when we first started dating, when we first started sleeping in the same bed, we have a queen. I would always sleep on the left side, I believe, right? And you would always sleep on the right side of the bed, and we always did that every single day. And I forget who we were listening to. I think it was Huberman again we were listening to. And he started talking about how to keep your brain young, quote unquote, you need to keep doing new things and keep putting your brain through experiences that change up your daily routine.
Right.
And a couple of things he said, I believe it was from him, that he said like, is changing the side of the bed that you sleep on. Because you get so used to sleeping on one side of the bed that like any sort of change up in that like routine would kind of throw you off. But if you consistently kind of switch it up, your brain never gets used to only just one single situation, and it gets used to many situations, and so you're able to sleep in many different kind of situations. And so like our tip was just switch sides of the bed. So now every month, instead of us consistently sleeping on one side, we would switch over to the other side. And so this month in January, I'm sleeping on the right side of the bed.
Yeah. And we've done it enough now where it starts to feel more natural. But when we first started doing it, it felt so unnatural and so strange. It's just a whole different way of thinking. So I think actually it was him talking about using your different hand to brush your teeth. Because he was talking about how it's like if you use your non-dominant hand to brush your teeth, it creates different pathways in your brain. And I think we kind of were talking about, well, where can we go from there? And that's where we came up with the idea of switching sides of the bed. And I think not only for mental reasons, I think it's important for physical reasons too. I think it keeps you from developing weird sleeping habits where you're used to being on one side, which over time can cause certain muscles to get tighter, your fascia to stiffen. So I think it's a really good thing, especially now that we've gotten used to it. It gets much easier over time, I feel like.
I agree. I think I still have a preferred side. But then I think I get tired of one side after a little bit now that we've been switching more and more. And I actually want to switch over to the other side, only because I can just start sleeping in different ways and I feel a little bit more comfortable that way.
Yeah.
In terms of like, kind of if you can or can't do it, if you have a queen bed, fine, you can do it. You can switch from the left to the right side. If you have a smaller bed, then like try to figure out different ways of sleeping in it. I know that many people are back sleepers or side sleepers or stomach sleepers. Maybe you can try to do shifts in the way you do that as well. And it's going to take a little bit of work because your brain needs to get used to it. Your brain is so used to one way. If your brain is so used to one way, and then if you try to do something else, your brain's not going to be able to relax and I'll just kind of start freaking out, be like, what's going on?
It's true. We started doing this actually too with like even the way that we sit for breakfast. We have a little bar that we sit at in the kitchen. It's a little island, and we switch same time, first time in the month. We switch sides.
Yeah, our bar stools, we have a left and a right chair, and I am almost always sit on the left, but now we've been switching. Now I'm sitting on the right. If you have a table at home, sit on the other side of the table. Change things up just so that like you get a little bit out of your comfort zone, and
Yeah.
it'll help you, I think, mentally.
One thing I read before I moved from LA to Boston was that there are 2 times of your life where your brain is most plastic, and plastic means that it's most like moldable, it's more easily adaptable, or it learns faster. The first is like during childhood, like your brain is learning so quickly and it's constantly changing and growing and creating new pathways. But outside of like growing up, you don't really have that kind of rapid change as you do when you move. So putting yourself in a new environment that actually causes your brain to like have to really adapt and learn and create new pathways. And then the other one, I could be wrong on this one, but I think it was like when you have kids, your brain has to really adjust to taking care of a new baby and all that that entails.
Well, all your habits change when you have a kid.
Yeah.
When you have a baby that you have to take care of, you're responsible for. All of a sudden, everything that you're so comfortable doing, all the situations and areas or private spaces in your life that you feel like were always yours and you always cherished, now have a baby in it. And so it's not so much that you're no longer private, but now you have an entire other person there with you that's going to be completely changing the entire atmosphere of your entire home.
Yeah, your senses heighten, I'm sure, too, to be able to like hear any cry of the baby or kind of sense any differences in temperature or whatever with your kids. So yeah, that makes sense. Hopefully, I'm not talking out of my butt with that one, but my brain, if my mind serves me correctly, then that was correct.
I agree. I think mental plasticity in that sense, if we generalize it, is being able to adjust your, I'm not going to say emotional reaction to a situation, but kind of, where you're, have your habits. And if those, for some reason, your external situation has changed, do you become a grumpy person? You know what I mean? Like, I'm so comfy in Boston. Everything about it's great. I don't think about anything and all that kinds of stuff. Put me into a different city. If I'm in there for too long of a period, I become very grumpy. I start to, I don't know what it is. I know I'm there temporarily. I know that I'm going to be back in home for a little while. I know that it's not going to negatively affect me. I'm there to travel or to explore. But for some reason, if I'm away long enough, I just get grumpy. I start missing home. I start missing my routine. I start missing my habits. I start missing the familiar sights and sounds and all the streets and the names and knowing where I'm going. And I get grumpy. And I feel like if I had more mental plasticity, as in my brain was a little more flexible, these kinds of things, I wouldn't get nearly as grumpy.
Yeah, that's one thing that they talk about as far as like mental resiliency. Especially, I've heard this in regards to like sports and athletic training, but consistently putting yourself out of your comfort zone on a regular basis so that it forces you to become more resilient. That way, your brain doesn't be like, oh, I'm in danger, this isn't right, but goes into like, okay, like we've done this before, we've gotten out of our comfort zone, I'll be okay.
Yeah, train your brain to be able to handle situations.
Yeah.
Robust. What is it? There was another word for it. There was it's like military training. They have a special discuss mental hardiness or mental resiliency or mental. There's something else to talk about it, but that's pretty much what we're describing too. Plasticity means that you're open to new experiences and that your brain isn't going to break in when you break habits. And then resilience also, like if it's put under strain of some sort, you know that you can get through it and deal with the situation if you need to.
Right. Yeah, I like the other thing that my dad does that I think is really good for mental plasticity is puzzles. Like every day he does puzzles just to keep his mind sharp. And I think my grandmother does that as well. It's something that I don't do personally, but I see the value in it and keeping your mind sharp and trying new challenges on a daily basis to kind of get your brain to think in different ways.
Yeah, I can see that. Keep your brain young. But now we're talking about people who are 70 and 90 years old.
It's true.
So it's if you're that age, I definitely recommend keeping your brain as active as possible every day.
Yeah.
Don't veg out in front of the TV.
But I think that's why it's important to talk about it now, because starting young, starting now, before you're 40 and 50 and in your old set ways and curmudgeon-y.
I agree. I think at our age, people around our age, it's definitely good to start habits now so that you can keep those habits as a lifestyle thing going forward as far as possible, so that you keep as mentally healthy as possible.
Right.
Now, I know that they don't really have enough research about Alzheimer's and dementia, that kind of thing, but I'm pretty sure like keeping your brain as active as possible is going to help you in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. Side note on that one, they're actually calling Alzheimer's diabetes type 3 diabetes because they're realizing that it actually has a lot to do with like blood sugar and insulin and that kind of the way that your body processes that. I know it's like newer research, but that's something that I've heard consistently is that they're calling it type 3.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Diabetes, yeah.
I don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
I was going to say like diabetes type 1, 2, and 3, and I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, just the importance of blood sugar balancing.
Yeah. In other words, don't stuff your face with sugar. It's like the stupidest piece of advice. It's like the stupidest piece of advice. I don't know enough about diabetes. I don't know. It's just like if you need like a prescription for it and you need insulin, you need insulin. But like if you want to live a healthy lifestyle, just stay active. You know what I mean? Try to eat well.
Right.
What else do I know about diabetes? Nothing.
Sorry, I know that was like such a tangent, but I was like, oh yeah. But meaning in a way that it's not completely genetic, and meaning that lifestyle does have impact. So to your point, studying, using your brain, adapting to new things, and then also too doing what you can as far as like balancing blood sugar, not going to extremes with diet, and then doing your best to keep your body like healthy and working.
I agree very much. Like, I think, so when I think of this kind of thing in terms of keeping your mental health as long as possible, I think it correlates very much to keeping like your physical health as long as possible. Where like if you're physically unhealthy, it's very, very difficult, borderline impossible when you're older to build up your physical health from that point, you know what I mean? From that point, you know what I mean? Versus if you kept yourself physically healthy for the longest time into old age, it's still hard to maintain all of it because you are getting older, but at least you're gonna be able to maintain it versus you building it back up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's hard to give an analogy exactly what I mean, but like say for your entire life you're able to squat 135 pounds, and you keep squatting 135 pounds. You keep going to the gym. Just regularly, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a week, depending, all the way up until old age. You might be able to squat 135 pounds when you're 80 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like if you're trying to start from scratch going to the gym at 70 and to the goal of getting to squatting 135 pounds, that's really not going to happen.
Significantly harder.
It's not going to happen. Like maintaining it is a lot of hard work overall, but you'll be able to keep it for much longer than to ever try to build it up in old age. And so it's like, that's the way to just think about mental health also, mental plasticity, mental hardiness, mental everything. Like maintain your mental state over the long term. Because if you ever try to build it up again in the future, it's borderline impossible.
Right. So I think incorporating those habits of like intentionally making changes on a regular basis, so going back to our example of switching sides of the bed or switching what side of the table that we eat on, I think it's just so important to create those habits now so that long term, and those are habits that we can stay consistent with. They're not ones that it's like we like binge do it, where it's like we do something really great for our brains for like a month and then completely fall off of it. It's something that we incorporate into our lifestyle.
Right. Yeah, it's just lifestyle changes. And by lifestyle changes, I mean you change something for life. There's no dieting, because dieting implies that that you only do it for like a certain period of time and then you stop doing it. It's like you're just changing your nutrition, what you eat. I guess you can say you're changing your diet too, but like that just means that you're permanently changing your diet. You know what I mean? You're not just doing it for a little bit. You're not going on keto for a little bit and then getting off keto. You're not doing paleo for a little bit and then getting off paleo. You're changing your diet permanently for the rest of your life. And that's like what's essentially going to keep you healthy.
100%.
There's no like, I'm going to do this for 3 months, see the benefits of it, stop doing it, and keep the benefits of it. You're not keeping the benefits.
Yeah.
You do something for 3 months and like consistently, you'll get good results out of it. But if you stop doing it, those results will fade and you will lose it.
Right.
And so like being consistent is much better for you over the long term than like doing these sprints essentially.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any other thoughts on mental plasticity?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I think this is probably helping keep our brains plastic. Doing something different that's out of our comfort zone, being in front of a camera and coming up with content off the spur of our head.
Top of the heads.
Top of the head. Spur of the moment. Spur of the moment.
Yeah, spur of the moment.
Top of the head.
Yeah.
There we go.
If you want to talk in like cliches and phrases. Turn of phrases. I don't know. I feel like we talked about mental plasticity and we just like sprinted through it.
Yeah, we can move on.
What else do we have planned besides communication styles?
I think we can go off on that one for a while though, because I feel like communication styles is such a broad topic in a way. Like there's so many things that touches that will be good.
All right. I agree. So I wanted to talk about communication today because so many times I find people disagree or people argue or something bad happens, not bad per se, but like mistakes happen only because there was just entirely miscommunication. Someone says something, the other person assumes that the other person said this thing, and then they actually got it wrong and miscommunication happened and like a mistake was made. You know what I mean? Like this happens at my work all the time where people miscommunicate constantly, where it's like, okay, I need this, and the other person hears, like, person A says, I need 1, 2, 3, and then person B says, oh, they need 2, 3, 4, and then they produce 2, 3, 4, and person A is like, I don't need 2, 3, 4, I need 1, 2, 3, and they're like, oh, why didn't you just say that in the first place? It's like, I did say I need 1, 2, 3 in the first place.
So frustrating.
And so the second person's like, no, you said you needed 2, 3, 4. It's like, so there's this miscommunication happening where they're just not able to like communicate with each other. And so much stuff like that happens.
For sure.
That's like frustrating.
I feel like one of the barriers there is people not considering how other people receive the message in the way that it's like, okay, well, like, what's the best way for me to say it so that you understand it? I feel like people just kind of say it how they want to say it without being intentional about it in the way that it comes out or packaging it in a concise, nice, understandable way.
Yeah. And I feel like it's not even that people sometimes don't even package it either. Some people just say something and assume the other person's reading their mind.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, what?
Definitely. I mean, those are like those stories that you read like on like, oh my gosh, my girlfriend da, 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 and then she got mad at me because I didn't assume that da, 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 da. Like, I feel like so many fights start that way.
Yeah. Something ridiculous, something like reading between the lines. You're supposed to read between the lines, but sometimes you just can't read between the lines.
Right.
Then like sometimes like I've seen some people email some random stuff. Like they email something like that's like a stream of consciousness that has no correlation between the beginning of the email and the end of the email, and you're just like, what the hell did I just read?
Yeah. I've seen that a lot.
It's like they write one sentence and then there's like 3 jumps in logic between that first sentence and the second sentence, and then the second sentence is completely off topic, and you're just like, how the freak are these related to each other? And you're trying to piece it together, and then so now you're trying to read their mind while they're writing the email.
All these mental gymnastics.
I know, seriously. Like once you get to know somebody a little more, then you're able to read their mind a little bit. You not read their mind, you're able to kind of understand what they mean instead of what they say. And so it becomes easier. But it also becomes so much easier if people actually said what they meant and not talked in code sometimes. They don't even talk in codes. Like some people are able to allude to things and imply things and have like double meanings to things. And like that's relatively like a form of competent communication. And other people just say things and they think they're saying something coherent, but they're not. And so you're like, what am I supposed to do with that?
Right. So what would you say are things that you can do to prevent miscommunication?
We learned this in business school. It is so freaking corny, but it works. And you can make it sound relatively natural if you're able to do it. When somebody says something to you, confirm to them that you heard what they said. So they'll say, I want 1, 2, 3. And you'll say, okay, so I'll get you 1, 2, 3 by Friday. Like, you're confirming with them that, and you're repeating back to them exactly what they said to you to show that you understand what they communicated. You know what I mean? Like, if someone comes up to you and says, like, if I was really young and my dad's just like, go mow the lawn. And I'll be like, okay, I'll go mow the lawn. I'll tell him I'll go mow the lawn. And like, that's very clear. But if my dad comes up to me and says, okay, go clean the yard, I'll be like, I don't know what that means. What does clean the yard mean? Do you want me to rake the leaves? Do you want me to weed things? Do you want me to like do the hedges, like trim the edges of the lawn? Do you want me to mow the lawn? Do you want me to like, what do you want me to do? And so like if he ever asks me to like go clean the lawn, I'll say, okay, I'll go rake the leaves. And he'll be like, no, that's not what I meant. And I'll be like, okay, what did you mean? He's like, I meant I want you to go like trim the edges of the lawn with the, whatever it's called. And I'll be, okay, I'll go trim the edge of the lawn. And then communication happens, great. Instead of being like, go clean the yard. Okay, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, that saves a lot.
Yeah.
That saves a lot of like doing the wrong thing, doing all the work, and then coming back and being like, what?
Like if I ever asked you, like, come help me in the kitchen, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It's like, what do you need me to do? It's like, I need you to help. It's like, what do you need help with?
Right, getting clarity before creating some action.
Right, because imagine if I'm cooking something and I ask you to help me in the kitchen and you start taking out the trash. And I'd be like, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any thoughts on miscommunications and communication styles?
Yeah, I think just knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to, and how to package that, and kind of keeping that in mind when you're talking to someone. I think that's a better way of communicating, kind of not to say changing who you are when you're with someone, but like adapting to something that you know that they're going to be able to understand that's available to them. So for example, there are doctors who I see online who are like physical therapists, they're chiropractors, and they talk in so much medical jargon. Like they'll be like the bilateral cuspid of da 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 da, and like by the end of it, you're like, what are you saying? Like, no one is going to understand this unless they have a medical degree. So they're trying to reach people who are average Joe and don't know anything, and yet they're talking in a language that people don't understand. And so I think just kind of understanding, like, who are you actually talking to is really important.
Yeah, and I feel like people are making a mistake when they do that. They use jargon where the other person is just not familiar with it, and it just doesn't work. I feel like sometimes people who do that though are just trying to like impress the other person.
Yeah. But it comes across the other way where it's like you're just so high and mighty where it doesn't come to like, I feel like your message doesn't come across for one, which means that you're wasting your time, and then it doesn't also make you look good either because people are like, all right.
I think that that's what happens sometimes, right? They do it because they want to sound smart and then they come off as dumb. Other times they do it because they want the other person to come off as dumb and say like, hey, if you don't understand these things, maybe I should take over. And you're just like, I don't know about that.
Right.
It's like, I'm in charge of my own health. If you're not going to communicate with me in a way that I understand, I'm just going to get another doctor.
Right.
And like, you have to do that. Because if some doctor, some authority figure comes up to you and starts using jargon to overwhelm you, maybe just don't trust that person. It doesn't work.
Yeah. You need to be able to understand and take like personal responsibility for your health, because you don't want to come out on the other side of things and being like, well, I didn't understand, and make some decision that maybe you wouldn't have made otherwise.
So how would you make communicating easier with that doctor?
I would ask them to so to your point, I would ask them to clarify, hey, can you or can you ask, even asking them, hey, can you say this in a different way for me? Like, am I understanding you correctly? Clarification is a big one for sure. And taking the time to clarify. I feel like a lot of times people just get lazy and like, it doesn't really matter, but it does, especially when it comes to your health.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Clarifying is a good one. Again, that's the business school way. You know what I mean? They do it in the military a lot also when they have radio communications. They do, they'd have like very formalized means of communication where you have to repeat back to like what you heard to make sure the communication happened.
Even the Gottmans. So there's a relationship expert couple, John Gottman and his wife. I think it's Sarah. I forget her name. They talk about that during fights for like conflict resolution to like reiterate what the other person is saying so that they feel understood, they feel heard. And then also too to clear up any miscommunication that could be happening too. So that's even a technique for like if you're in conflict to kind of mitigate that.
That's going to be hard though. Like if you're in conflict, both of you have to take a step back from your egos for a second and then figure it out. You know what I mean? Like if you're in conflict and you feel like somebody's attacking you, you're going to go on the defensive and start attacking the other person maybe. You know what I mean? Communication is just not going to happen. So I feel like you have to like take a step back first.
Well, and that's what they say, is they say that if there's a moment of conflict, if you're able to hit pause and step away and come back when you both are in a calmer state and not just in a reactive like fight or flight mode, then that's ideal.
Okay, good luck to that. Good luck, everybody.
I feel like we do that though. I feel like when you and I have disagreements, a lot of times we'll kind of hit pause for a little bit and then revisit the conversation a little bit later when we're in a better state. I feel like
we're okay about it.
Yeah.
I agree. It's one of the things I love about you. I'm not saying that me and you aren't successful at doing something like that. I'm just saying that like, if you're having a conversation who's with somebody who's not able to do that, good luck. You know what I mean?
That's true.
That's just hard. It's like, that's kind of almost the worst case. Best case scenario, you're both able to step back and figure it out, and that's difficult. Second worst case scenario, because there isn't really a medium case scenario, is that like both of you are on the attack and on the defensive, just yelling at each other. You know what I mean? That way, both of you are angry, both of you are on the same page, and both of you are just dealing with the way you know it. Worst case scenario is one person's on the defensive and will never back down, is consistently attacking and yelling, doing everything, and the other person is consistently trying to step back and trying to create avenues of communication, is not able to. That is awful, and I feel for the person who's trying to like take a step back.
Yeah.
But then like that becomes very difficult to do and very difficult to manage.
That's never a fun situation to be in, where you're setting a boundary and then the other person keeps like bulldozing through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't work. I don't know. It's like beating your head against the wall.
Yeah.
Maybe one day the wall will break, but probably your head first.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's important with like communication just in general too, but also with miscommunication, is like setting your boundaries of like what you will and won't discuss. I think that's important, and making that clear from the get-go. That way it's like if there's something that you don't want to touch or you don't want to go, like make that clear to someone. That way like when they go there, which inevitably they probably will go there unless you make it clear, like you're not going to react.
Yeah. I don't know how else to do it.
Yeah.
You have to just be unresponsive to situations in which your boundaries are being crossed.
Yeah.
And you can't respond being angry about it. You can't like appease it either. You have to end it. End of conversation. You know what I mean? Like if you're texting somebody and they're texting back and they're like going over the boundaries of discussion topics that you want to, stop texting.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's a big one.
No, like telling the person over and over again, stop talking, don't do this, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. Stop responding.
Yeah.
You just let the other person sit there, and both of you can sit there and both of you can calm down and then start talking about it maybe another time. Yeah. Move the conversation somewhere else or something like that. You know what I mean? Or, at another point in time, talk about how your boundaries are crossed. But yeah, everybody just needs time to cool down. But it's hard.
For sure.
What was it? I gave we were talking about communication styles, and I was talking about how everybody has their own communication style, and everybody needs to bend a little bit in order for communication to happen. And communication is literally just like I say I say some information and that person actually picks up that information and understands what I said. And everyone thinks it's so easy, but like, this is a little bit of a tangent, but like, imagine you're in school and someone's trying to teach you something complicated that your teacher is trying to teach you something complicated, say calculus, and they're communicating calculus to you. Like, did you get it the first time? Probably not. You know what I mean? They very clearly gave you the information you needed to know, but whatever happened when they were giving you that information, you did not pick it up. I did not pick it up the first time. Like, I'm quick to pick up these things, but like the first time someone said, oh, when you do the derivative of this equals this, and I'll be like, what? Like, after a while, they taught me, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it, now you're communicating with me, now we're on the same page. But it's just like, it took me a while to understand it. And I feel like a lot of people respond to that, where it's like, you're communicated something, and you're just like, huh?
For sure. I think patience in that regard, like if you're the one conveying the message, to reiterate as much as possible and clarify and kind of reword and if needed, be patient with it.
Yeah. But yeah, where I was going was that everybody has different communication styles, and everybody should learn how to bend their communication styles so that they can all bend and so that you can all kind of like be flexible with each other. Because nothing's worse than like when somebody who refuses to bend and you're just not able to communicate with them. And then there's even a worst case scenario where like another person is bending over backwards just to like try to appease somebody who will not bend. Right. And that happens actually quite often. And it's sad. Communication still doesn't happen in that situation. Excuse me.
Too much booch.
Yeah.
Too much kombucha. Yeah, no, I mean, we were just talking about communication styles. I'm an external processor, so when I am talking out loud, I'm also kind of talking out my thoughts, whereas you're an internal processor. So like when you're thinking about something, like you like to keep it to yourself until you've like chewed on it and digested it, and then once you've come to a conclusion, you like talk to me about it. Whereas like I'm the opposite. I will talk something through as I'm thinking about it to think about it. And so I know that kind of probably took some adjusting for you to get used to the fact that like I hadn't arrived to a decision already as I was telling you that I was thinking it through, but for you, you're probably like, she already made her decision. What is this girl talking about?
Yeah, and I've adjusted that too. Like, I know that you're an external processor, you need to talk things out loud, and so I sit there and I talk with you.
You do.
And like, it's almost like explicit in my head, and I'm here not because me and her are trying to beat a dead horse or we're talking something over and over again. I'm literally here just to help her externally process.
Yeah.
And I'll do it.
Thank you, babe.
And then like, that's where my mental state is at. Because then like after me and her talk about things and she's kind of like finally coming to like her own conclusions, then I can kind of disengage and just start thinking about it myself in my head. You know what I mean? Just start like my brain churning.
And when I see that his brain's churning, I try to give him his space to be able to kind of think something over before picking his brain about it. Or like I'll ask like, hey, can I pick your brain? Or like, what are your thoughts? Mm-hmm. When I can tell that he's starting to go into that thinking mode. Mm-hmm. It was definitely an adjustment though, because I wasn't used to your internal processing. And I'm like, what are you thinking?
Yeah, there was an adjustment period for you and for me, I think. Because for me, I'm just like, this girl's talking about something like over and over again, and I don't get it. It's like, I thought we decided this, and then no, next sentence she decides this, and then next sentence she decides this. I'm just like, I thought we already decided on A. Like, nope.
Welcome to my mind. Yeah, I like to go in all the avenues of like, oh, where does this go? And like, it can be helpful because then I think about like all aspects of, an issue, but I'm sure it's a little tedious to listen to sometimes.
Not at all these days, because it's like, we'll talk about, I don't know, let's say like you're externally processing and you've come to like 3 different takeaways, takeaway A, B, or C. And like, we'll talk about it, and clearly from me listening to her, option A has like the most things going for it, you know what I mean? And so I'm just like, it's very clearly we should just go with A. And so I asked her, like, why don't we go with A? And she's like, no, well, the B and C, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, well, B and C maybe. And then, like, you have to start thinking to yourself, like, even if, like, there's a number of things going well for A, there might be one big thing going for B that makes B the right decision.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I shouldn't say, you know what I mean.
You quim?
Yeah. And that's the way I try to think about it. Like, how do I do it? How do I explain it?
I was gonna say, one thing I appreciate is the fact that you've never tried to change me with that. You've never tried to, like, just have me, like, well, figure it out on your own, or, like, gotten impatient with me. I really appreciate the fact that you listen and hear me out when I'm just, like, talking in circles, thinking through something.
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking, like, okay, imagine you playing skee ball. Is that what this game's called?
Oh, the one where you roll the ball and it, like, goes into the, like, different targets?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Imagine option A is skee ball and you hit the 100-pointer 4 times. Option B is you hitting the 500-pointer once. And you're just like, okay, well, yeah, you scored 4 times on option A, but, like, option B scored once, but it's still a higher score than option A, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's like, even though we're talking about it over and over again between option A and B, it's like, if we can figure out that B is actually a higher score than A, then that's what we're going to go with.
Right.
Even though I feel like it's a foregone conclusion that A was the right choice. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know. Sometimes though, when like you're trying on like 3 different shirts. I'll give him my honest opinion and then you go with the shirt and I'm just like, I don't know why you went with that one. But you clearly have your reasons. And so I'm just like, okay.
It's true.
It's fine.
That's one that in the beginning I used to, like, show or, like, model, like, different options, and he would just be like, I'm not a fashion person, like, don't ask me about this. And now he's like, especially when I order new clothes from the store, he's like, go try them, let me see. And he's like, that one's a keep, that one's a
Yeah, a little bit. Still not a fashion person though.
You say that, but you got good taste.
I guess, but still not a fashion person. So if you ask me what's fashionable, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. What else do you want to say about communication styles? Yelling is obviously wrong.
Yep. Never a good thing.
If you yell at somebody, the other person shuts their brain off. You might get like some steam off, but the other person will not and cannot listen to you when you yell.
Yeah.
Like you might get angry, you might be yelling, you might be telling them how stupid they are, whatever. The other person shuts down. There's no communications going on, and whatever you're trying to tell them, even if it has any sort of merit whatsoever, they're not going to be able to pick up on it. Don't yell.
Yeah. I think another one is paying attention to body language, because body language speaks so much more than someone's words, especially if it's someone who you're getting to know or you don't really know too well, or you're trying to figure out if you can trust them or not. But making sure that their body language matches up with what they're telling you, I think is a big one. Or just kind of looking at people's demeanor and saying like, okay, like based on how they're kind of sulking right now, maybe now is not the best time to like ask some really big thing of them, or just kind of deciding timing. But I think body language is a really big cue to pay attention to when you're communicating.
Yeah. I'm not the expert at body language reading. But like it's going to be obvious, right? Body language is not so much like, oh, which way are they facing or things like that. Body language is like, are they literally sad looking?
Yeah.
Or like, are they like pacing? Or are they like, usually they're like very energetic, but now they're like super slow and like constantly lying in bed or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's a little bit more behavioral, but it's still all body language.
Right.
It's much easier to pick up on.
But I feel like there are some people who like can see someone in a different state than they're usually in, see something different with their body language. Like for example, like the pacing, like you said, and then like whatever it is that they wanted to say, they're just going to say it anyways, regardless of whatever state that person is. And like, I think making sure that someone is in a receptive state before even like approaching them with something, especially if it's an ask, if it's something that you need them to do, or if it's something that's important, like making sure that your timing of bringing something up is good.
Yeah, to an extent. Be flexible. They should be flexible too. No matter if like what mood they're in, they should still be flexible to listening to what you have to say.
Sure.
Not no matter. there are some situations you probably shouldn't. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know, like, if you're sick, you know what I mean? Like, with the flu or COVID and you're lying in bed, the other person shouldn't be coming up to you and start talking about anything serious.
Right.
It's like, you're sick.
Yeah.
Like, there's no expectation for you to listen to, like, hard topics right now.
Yeah.
It's like the whole point is you're going to be laying in bed, you take some medicine, you get better. And
Mm-hmm.
then once you're getting better, then you can start dealing with it again.
I remember one time I was on vacation, like actual vacation, took time off. I had a manager messaging me being like, I need this today. I need this now. Where are you? She was emailing me while I was on vacation. Like I had taken that time off. She had approved the time off, and like middle of my vacation starts like blowing me up. So things like that.
Yeah. Man, so much of this boils down to like reading the room
Yeah.
and being emotionally intelligent, but like that's so hard, like so generic and so vague. So like I don't know. What's another example of just like something you should or shouldn't do in terms of communication?
Thinking your own thoughts or trying to figure out what you're going to say while the other person's talking. I think that's a big one where people are always kind of planning ahead, like what they want to say instead of actually fully listening to the other person and being present in the moment. I think that's a big one.
Yeah, talking at each other instead of having a conversation.
Yeah.
That happens. It happens so often. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
Where like people just talk past each other. You would think they're talking to each other, but no, they're just my thoughts, their thoughts, my thoughts. No, like I don't know. No real communication's happening there.
It's like their sole intent of talking is like, I have something really important that you need to hear. Like, I have to say it. And that's all that matters to them. It's like you said, it's not a two-way street. They don't care about what the other person has to say. It's just like, I need to get out what I need to say, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, best defense is a good offense, right?
Goodness.
You accuse me of this, well, I accuse you of this. Ha, screw you.
It's always the worst being the third person in a conversation like that, where you're like around two people who are just talking past each other, and you're the third person like watching it. And you're just like, it's like watching like a ping pong tournament where you're just like, and then yeah.
It happens so often also in political conversations.
Sure.
It's like, I'm talking about this. Well, I'm talking about this. It's like one person's talking about the economy, the other person's talking about like something else, and you're just like, you guys are not talking about the same thing and yelling at each other. Like,
Yeah.
what are you even saying at this point?
Totally.
You're both indignant, you're both yelling at each other, you're both saying how stupid the other person is, but you're just not talking about the same thing whatsoever.
Yeah.
Ugh, I hate that. I hate it also when you make a point and the other person like either purposefully or mistakenly misinterprets it and makes a different point, and you're like, why are we talking about that? Like, I don't get it.
Like we were not there.
It's like, I was talking about Lord of the Rings and you bring up Star Wars. What are we talking about?
Don't die.
Well, okay, like, I don't want to talk too political, but like, imagine we were talking about Star Wars and I was talking about like the space travel in Star Wars and like how I have issues with it. And you start talking about the space travel in Star Trek, and I'm just like, why are you bringing up Star Trek? We're talking about Star Wars.
Yeah.
Something along that, you know what I mean?
So where do you go from there if you find yourself in a situation where someone is like talking on a totally different planet from where you were? Like, how do you rein that in, or how do you kind of bring it back, or try to
It depends who that person is. If he's not somebody that you know can talk in good faith, I would say just give up that conversation immediately. As in, like, if he's a stranger, or he's a person you know that never takes things seriously, or always misinterprets things, or never, like, converses things about the subject matter itself, just give up the conversation. There's no communication happening there. If it is a person, somebody you know who's a friend or family member who you know is reasonable and can talk in good faith, I would just bring up the fact that like they just changed the topic completely. And so just address it with them and say like, hey, I was talking about this, but you just immediately changed the topic to this. And if they are a reasonable person, then they might admit it and apologize. But sometimes they don't also. So it is what it is.
Sure.
And then I think that if you talk about something and they just change the topic, just give it up.
Yeah.
I would just change the topic to something that's less controversial or something else.
And I think it depends on like the intensity of the topic, right? Like if it's something as lame as Star Wars and Star Trek, then it's like, okay, like if you want to take it somewhere else, like it's fine. But if it's something really important to you or something, like depending on the weight and depending on like the sensitivity of the topic. Yeah.
Like, not to get too political, but it always happens when like one person criticizes the other party, and the other party, instead of like discussing whatever that point of criticism was, whether to debunk it, whether to just elaborate on it, whether to try to understand the other person's perspective, they immediately just criticize the other person's party instead. There's no communication happening there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like whataboutism, where it's like, well, you did this. Well, it's like, well, you did this.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
It's awesome. See ya.
I think with communication too, being open to receive ideas different from yourself. So like kind of going back to the idea of like not having your own thoughts in mind when you're listening to someone, but being fully present and fully open to what they have to say. I think just being receptive and not defensive as soon as someone brings up something that's controversial to like what you believe. Like one thing I really appreciate about you is that I can have a different opinion than you have, and like that doesn't change like your sense of self, or you don't feel threatened by the fact that I might have a different opinion about something. Like it has nothing to do with your identity or who you are, or so because of that you don't get reacted to it. And I think you're very open to hearing other thoughts and other ideas other than your own. And I think that that's important for communication, that you don't put those walls up just because something is different from the way that you think. Yet keeping your mind plastic in the way that you're open and you're receptive.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of people can benefit from that, where they hold beliefs, but they're not married to their beliefs. They're not invested so much in their beliefs that an attack on those beliefs is an attack on themselves. That's the issue with that, though, is I think it's just very natural and normal and very human to be married to your beliefs.
Sure.
And so, like, if those beliefs are attacked, you will defend them as if you were attacked themselves. And, like, I think that that's a lot of what happens in general. You know what I mean? Like, this comes up in religion a lot. Like, you're Christian and somebody attacks Christianity, so you personally get offended and start defending it. You know what I mean? Stop saying that. But somebody can attack, if you're a Christian and somebody attacks or criticizes Christianity, you don't have to get personally offended by it. You could talk to them about their criticism, try to understand where it's coming from, without being personally like involved emotionally in that situation.
Yeah.
Because your beliefs don't have to change, and you personally don't have to be attacked or offended by somebody said, and you don't have to change as a person just because somebody said something. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, having a strong sense of self and who you are and feeling confident in that. I feel like that plays into it, and being rooted.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it strong sense of self. I would say, like, just don't be so emotionally invested in your ideas that if they're attacked, that you feel you're attacked.
That's a good way of putting it. I like that.
Like, you can be invested in your beliefs because you believe what you think what you believe is right, and that's like a good thing to do, but you don't have to be personally offended by it. I don't know what to say. Like, if somebody, like, we're Americans, and so if somebody comes up to me and starts attacking the First Amendment, like your right to free speech, the right for it to not be stifled, essentially, and someone starts criticizing my First Amendment right, I'm not going to get offended or defensive about it. I'm an American. I have it. Whatever they say is not going to mean anything in terms of me having the right or not. And it's not going to change my belief in the right to have it also. But it'd be interesting to hear why they think so. And oftentimes, whenever people start criticizing the First Amendment or something like that, it's very surface level criticisms. And so you can talk to them and ask them, like, well, you believe in this, like, why do you believe in it? What happens if this happens or that happens? And then, go from there.
Yeah. I think that's an important characteristic to have. It's just like a genuine curiosity and being willing to explore different ideas, different things.
Yeah. The one that I see online all the time, which I guess used to be a little bit more, like, rile me up emotionally a little more than it does lately. Like, it doesn't rile me up anymore. Is this idea that hate speech is not free speech. Where someone will say, like, you have a right to free speech, but you don't have a right to hate speech. And I asked them, like, I used to think to myself, like, I would get riled up or get defensive about it. But recently I've been asking them, like, what does that mean? And people say, like, you don't have a right to be hateful to somebody else. And I asked, like, what does hateful mean? Well, people say, this is the definition of hateful. And I say, okay, well, what if I define hateful this way? And they'll be like, no, that's not the right definition. Well, I tell them, like, that's not your choice. That you don't get to decide what the right definition is, right? And so if I define hate speech as this way, like, congratulations, now you're saying hate speech, and now you don't have a right to free speech. And people don't like that. People really don't like that. When you just flip the definitions on them so that you take their rights away instead of them taking your rights away. But it doesn't work, you know what I mean? No one's going to open their eyes because of that. But it's nice to point out to them. And maybe you'll, like, put a little crack in their armor, but it doesn't usually happen. I don't know.
Sure.
I'm going off a little bit too much of a tangent.
I was going to say, I don't think either of us are going off on hate speeches, though, just clarify.
Right. No, I get it. But anyways, anything else you wanted to talk about in terms of investment in beliefs or communication styles or anything? I feel like we've gotten off topic quite a bit.
I was going to say, we've been going on for a while. Yeah.
Last thoughts on communication styles?
I think just being open, being receptive to other people, not being closed off, knowing your audience. That's a big one. I think that's the biggest one, honestly, is like knowing who you're talking to.
Okay. My last thoughts is I'll just reiterate that yelling is pretty much the worst thing you can do when you're communicating with somebody.
Yeah.
Pretty much the worst thing you can do. Because no communication happens. It just doesn't.
Shuts it down.
It's like if you're trying to get something across, you're actually trying to get something across and you're yelling, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
All right. So, next episode, Sunday?
Sunday morning, yeah.
11 a.m.?
I would say so.
Or 10?
10:30?
10? No, we can't do 10 to 30.
Why not?
10 or 11?
Happy medium.
No.
11.
11. All right,
Yeah.
cool. We're going to try to shoot for next Sunday, which is, I don't know what day it is. What day is it?
The 8th? Maybe? 7th? 8th? I can't believe we're in January already. That's crazy.
I know,
to
it's
me.
January. Happy 2024 and Happy New Year's.
Yay.
Yeah, it's going to be the 7th at 11 a.m. Stay tuned. We'll try to
Eastern
start
time.
at Eastern time. We'll try to, we'll start right on the dot. But then thank you for joining us. I'm not sure what the topics are for next time. We'll probably wing it again and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
I'm Chinggis.
I'm Bethany.
This tips from your boyfriend.
Yay.
Ugh.